Good morning. My name's Joseph Reimer. I have a web page called Testimony of the Skull. This is a continuation of that testimony. I have been called out in the West Bank of California and given revelation of what the beast is and what the Antichrist is. There's a lot to it. It's not something that just occurred in a matter of minutes. It's been ongoing for 17 years of my life. But the time, I think, is close. I try not to upset my family, but it's hard not to focus on what I have been shown and revealed through revelation by Jesus. I would like to start with the fact that in June of 1991, a young girl died in my arms. Never met her before, no idea who she was, really don't even know her name. But on June 20th, 91, she died in my arms, and it was terrible, tragic. And I went out in the desert by where I grew up on the West Bank of California, and I called out to what I know to be God, and I said, God, help me understand this. I need the truth. I went into abstinence that day. I stopped the pursuit of, the happy little bunnies. And so 6 months later, almost to the day, December 27th, my brother Tim Reimer died in my arms, at which point I lamented. I went out into the desert and I called out to God again, and I said, God, you must show me the truth. What is the truth? I didn't come out of abstinence until 2006, 2007, when I met my wife, who is now, is actually 2008. We got married. I stayed in abstinence that time. 3.5 years later from the initial ask, in 94, December 25th, 1994, myself and another man were up on the river named Tommy. I grew up with him. Me and Tommy we had eaten dinner with our families, and we met up after we ate dinner. And I have a skull, as I mentioned. I have a testimonyoftheskull.com. Well, I told Tommy about it. He thought I was lying, so I went and got it. We were up on the West Bank on the river, about 17 miles north of Blythe, and a great light came. And now there's no other description but a great light. I didn't know how to get away from it. It came in many different directions. It came from the stars. It came from behind the mountains. It came from the other way. The last time it came at us was from the east coming west. And there was a giant cloud. It was a real rainy El Nino year. There was a giant cloud passing, and as it reached the cloud opened, at which point we all but peed ourselves. We jumped in my little Ford Ranger, and we tried to outrun it, which is absolutely futile. But anyhow, we went down to a place where the neighborhood that we had eaten Christmas dinner, where me and my dad had joined my family. We began knocking on doors, trying to wake people up. They just told us, go away, you're crazy. I can't blame them. But the fact of the matter is, we saw a light over the West Bank, 1994 Christmas night. It was a month or two later, my brothers came and got me because I had effectively lost my mind. I couldn't stop talking about the light and this and that, and I'm having visions. I began seeing white clouds in my mind that would start in the back of my mind and go forward, and I would see like a silhouette or a negative picture of something. And so my dad said, go get your brother and bring him home. So my dad, a very quietly loving man, but he let me come home and stay with him, and he never asked much. And I began to wander in the desert, and this went on for about 4 months. 5 months, and then now it's in 95. I start to find these little markings in the ground that actually look just like the silhouettes I see in my mind. So as this happens, I get out in the desert, and there is so many little things that I find that I try to explain to people. No one understands. Of course, it would be hard for anyone else to understand what each one of us go through individually. Then I began to hear in my spirit, I begin to hear things. And then as I start to pray, I never prayed before. My problem is my dad was heavily involved with the Catholic Church. And at that time, he was going through great turmoil with the Catholic Church because he had raised a lot of money and they wanted the money. And he wouldn't give it to him. So I had no faith in the church. So my dad told me, he said, son, he said, your mother has some Cherokee in you. And I don't know if that helps. So I began to pursue the native in me, which it could be just a minuscule amount. It doesn't matter because it's the thought and the prayers that count. So as I began to pray and meditate, things started to happen. I can't really explain what they are exactly this second, but what happened was a zip tie fell through a solid pipe. Now that's a miracle to me, nothing to anybody else. And as I began to pray and meditate, the visions that I would see became more clear and clearer and clearer. And then I would go out and I could begin to find things. This went on for a few months. In October, I was awakened and a voice told me I had 3 things to show you. And I got up and drove out down the highway and I saw a marker. And I thought, well, that must be it. And I turned and got out and just walked in the middle of the night. Well, at the end of it, I found this huge prayer field. And there was crosses and wagons, just immense, made of stone many, many years ago. Now, this prayer field was it was Christian in essence, and I don't really know religion. My parents didn't raise us religious. The 3 younger of the siblings, I'm the baby of 8, were spared the catechisms and all that. Excuse me. As I began to find these things like this prayer field, I began to realize that the intagulos around my house were all part of what I was revealed. When I asked for the truth, these silhouettes I would see are their drawings in the desert. And when I started to go out there and I started to meditate out there, I realized what had happened. It came to me very quietly, very slowly. It came to me that these aren't origin. They're not made by the Native Americans. It doesn't say it says they're made by ancient man. And I asked, well, who made them? And I began to focus my meditation on who made them. And as I find these markers and I find more and more of them, I realize that this isn't native. This is something else. And so one day I was sitting there meditating early in 96, I would say March of 96, and I heard a voice whisper, 3 wise men traveled from afar. Now, what did that mean? And at this point, I had never read the Bible because I wasn't raised religious. But I over the next month, I was given the revelation that they're what came and contaminated the earth. It says that there's a demon, a dragon, a beast, and a false prophet. Well, they're what are these things. They were some kind of alien that came here, demonic in essence, and when they died, they didn't go home. We die, we go back to wherever we came from originally, but when they died, they didn't go home. So when this revelation came to me, I began to pray for judgment on myself, that if I could be judged, then let them be judged. And if I'm found worthy, then let me cast them off this earth. Which sounds like ramblings of a crazy man. But what it was the start of a very, very long journey. I began to pray fervently for days on end. And then I had a voice come to me, climb the mountain. When we were children in 1985, me and my friends climbed a mountain close to my house. This mountain, when we climbed it, we built a giant stone altar on it. This stone altar it represented our friendship, our love for each other. You know, it was a big, and when we got done, I don't know why, but I said, I dedicated it as the throne of God. We dedicated it, we all celebrated it, and we left. Well, God doesn't forget things like that. Men so easily forget, but God doesn't. And when we came down, that's at the same time I found the skull, very close in the time frames. And you go on with life, you know. And I joined the Army a couple years later. And I think it was 85, 85 that we built the altar. I'm pretty sure. I had my friend Manny with me, and Shane, and Phil, and my brother who's deceased. But anyways, there was a group of us that built the altar. So when I get going and I had called out to God, this altar that we had built, it exists. It's real. Now, the skull exists. It's real. I have now shown Tommy. The night the light came, the skull began to actually illuminate. So he wanted to throw it in the river. I refused to throw it in the river. And but that led me out in the desert. Why did this thing illuminate? Why are we here? And when I started to understand the revelation that I was receiving, it was simply that these things came, died, did not leave. So I began to pray to take them away. So to do that, how do you do that? I don't know, but I'm serious about praying this. And I began to be led back out into the desert. Well, this time it's in 96. And I'm being led out into the desert on Easter weekend. I don't understand Easter. I, again, was not raised with religion. When we were evicted by the government in 1972, my parents went to the Catholic Church. Catholic Church slammed the door in their face, and my mom did not teach us Catholicism at all. We were raised to believe in God, and God is with you everywhere. So I have this incredible sense of drawing me out into the desert. I go out into the desert, and I go up to this guy's house, who's not really a friend. We've known each other a long time, and another guy comes up just out of nowhere, and he asked me, "What are you doing?" Well, if you have ever seen somebody possessed, this man was possessed. And I said, well, anyways, I said, I'm going for a camp. He said, well, let me give you a ride. So he gives me a ride out to where I told him I was going, and he gets out and he tries to pull a gun out, but he forgot the gun. So he left quickly, and I changed my direction of path. And that night I climbed that mountain, like 1 o'clock in the morning, Easter Sunday, 1996. It was actually Easter Saturday, I think. Saturday was the day it landed on, and Saturday night. And I climbed that mountain, and I went to the altar that we had built as children, the throne. And that night up on the altar, I heard voices trying to drive me crazy. They were saying, you're going to die. You're going to jump off the cliff. If you're called by God, dive off this mountain and he'll save you. And I'm like, I ain't doing none of that. But anyways, what happened was I got up there and I hear all these voices. My shoulder dislocated on me. And anyways, I survived climbing the mountain. I got to the altar. It got real windy. I made an offering. And I asked God to take me in place of my brother. Pass his judgment onto me and my family. Now, that's not normal, what people don't usually do, but I did it. Then I came down from the mountain, and I walked for about 24 more hours straight in the desert. And in that time, that is the first time I audibly heard the voice of God speak to me. I laid down out under a bush way out in the middle of the mountains behind my house. And I heard a voice of God say, Joseph, love is the answer you seek. And all he said is Joseph to love. That's what he said, Joseph to love. Because my question was, what is the truth? So the truth is love. So I make it home. Now this is the start of a long journey. Anyways, I will go and finish talking more about this later. But right now I will turn and show you the mountain that I am referring to. 1 second. The big round one in the middle. You see it? I hope you do. Anyways, that is the backside of that mountain is where we made the throne. And I will have many videos to follow that will follow up on this. Anyways, this is my testimony. I am ready for this, I guess. God bless. Talk to you later.